All right, people, we've got a real doozy here today. I'm going to be talking about The Prestige. I want to give you fair warning. If you haven't watched The Prestige, you got no business watching this because all I'm going to do is spoil the movie for you. Although I find that even in explaining the movie to people, people still have questions. And if you haven't watched the movie twice, if you haven't looked at a couple of the things that I had in the assignment that were highlighted, that were in the black background, so you had to highlight them. Um, you may not have benefited from watching the movie twice. So that being said, if you haven't watched the movie twice, if you don't want it ruined, then don't watch this. Okay. That being said, here's the deal. If you watch the movie and you did your reaction, here's some things that might help you. Or if you've already done the whole assignment, then let me just kind of not ruin the movie for you, but let me point out some things that maybe you had not noticed. All right. So I'm not sure exactly where to start. So I'm going to start with Robert Angier. Robert Angier is the stage name of a guy named Lord Caldlow. Okay. So before the movie even starts, you have to understand that two things have already begun. You've got this guy named Lord Caldlow, who is a British lord, and in the turn of the century, it would not have been a very reputable thing for a British lord to go and become a magician. All right. Being a magician is, I don't know if it is or isn't a reputable thing to do now. We don't have a lot of them, probably because you have to be very talented and skilled. But magicians were like a step up from being pickpockets or being scoundrels or whatever. They were not well respected. And you can see that the quest that he has throughout the movie is to become this entertainer and not to be seen as a magician. Because, like I said, magicians were like three-card money tricksters who are just trying to separate you from your money. But the great Danton, Robert Angier, Lord Caldlow, who are all the same three people, he wants to be more than that. Okay, so he is Lord Caldlow. He is married. Um, he and his wife go to London and pretend to be this guy named Robert Angier. And under the guise of Robert Angier, he learns from Cutter and from these other magicians, including, Alfred Borden, who we'll get to. He learns, the trade, and he becomes a magician, and picks up what he can, and he uses whatever skills to fool people, to mystify them, to make them question what's real and whatever, misdirection, all of that. He's good at just like the hand tricks, but he's also good at the grand illusions. And he gets that way by being kind of ruthless because he wants nothing to stand between himself and what he believes is like his fate or whatever. So that being said, Lord Caldlow goes to London with his wife, becomes Robert Angier. Under Robert Angier, he goes out and becomes the great Danton. After his wife dies and drowns because somebody tied the wrong knot, and we'll get to that. It's one of the Bordens. I don't know which one it is. You can probably figure out which one it is if you go back through the movie. But he becomes the great Danton. He goes through a number of different steps to become this performer. And after basically getting tricked by Borden to go to America and to meet Nikolai Tesla, he comes back with this machine. And here's where it gets kind of confusing. Alfred Borden has this machine during his stage show that is made by Tesla. It's a Tesla coil. It makes a whole bunch of noise, but it doesn't do anything except for that. Okay. It's just something to capture people's imagination, but it doesn't actually do anything. When Robert Angier goes to America and he meets Nikolai Tesla and he says, I want a machine that will transport me from here to here. Nikolai Tesla builds him a machine that makes a copy of him and transports him from here to here. Sorry, I got my camera backwards. Like he asked. And that's why he's saying, like, do you understand the cost of this? And he's like, yeah, money's no option. No, the cost of it. Like, I'm going to duplicate you because this is how I know how to do the thing you want me to do. And that's why at the beginning of the movie, right in plain sight, you've got all these top hats, right? Where it says, are you watching closely? So go back, watch that part again. Watch the whole movie again. Like, it's a different movie the second time around when you know that. That's why there are two cats. That's why when you see the flashback at the end of the movie, when he copies himself and then shoots himself, he's got like this code of ethics, if you want to call it, that there will only be one of him. And so anyways, Caldlow becoming Angier, and becoming Danton. He goes through, he does his performances. He during his performances, he dies every night. Like he has to be brave to do it because he goes up. You can see the trap door drop out. When he does that, he drops himself into a tank and he dies. And what happens is simultaneously you have like one standing in the thing. The machine copies him, and the one that got copied drops through, and then the other one goes like into the balcony because he has the machine calibrated so that he sends his new one into the balcony. Just like when they were copying the hat and they were going way off into the woods or whatever, or the cat, they didn't know how to calibrate it, but now Robert Angier knows how to calibrate it. And so he sends himself up there. So he does that like 100 times, right? There's going to be 100 performances, no more, no less. And at the end of doing that, he must beam himself, his final version, into a stagecoach, and he goes away and he goes back to being Lord Caldlow, which is why the next time we see him after Robert Angier is dead and Cutter sees him on a slab and everything like that, and everybody witnesses him drowning and they see the body and all that. This is why somebody can come back with the mustache and the top hat and whatever and be Lord Caldlow, because he never stopped being Lord Caldlow. He went back to being a rich British lord that he always was. And nobody knew he was Robert Angier because he couldn't embarrass his family with his magic shenanigans. Okay, so I don't know how many times he dies. At least 100 times. He had to practice the trick. So, and there's the one clone that he killed. So I'm going to say that he probably had to be prepared to die at least 110 times or something like that, which is why, like, he had to be brave to do that, to be sure. Because that wouldn't be easy, because what if something goes wrong in the machine and he turns the machine on, he drops to his death, and then like nothing happens for him going in. Like, think of it this way. He's a clone. He's born. He shows up in the balcony, and then he knows like everything that happened, everything that was going on in Robert Angier when he drops through the trapdoor is in the clone, right? So the clone, like the last thing he remembers is turning on the machine and then waking up in this balcony. He has all the same thoughts. He has all the same memories. He has the limp from the bad knee because it copies everything exactly. So we've got to believe that like it's just like an instantaneous like crossover from one to the other. Okay, so maybe he copied himself and he set his clones loose to go do the trick, while Caldlow himself was somebody in the audience. I don't know, but that's also getting into excuse me, getting into something I can't prove. Everything that I've just told you, I can prove. And if you've seen the movie, you probably know it to be true because you saw the same movie that I saw. Okay, so that being said, we've got this other guy. We've got this guy named Alfred Borden, which calling him Alfred Borden is a little bit problematic because we don't know what his name actually is, right? Because Alfred Borden is the stage name. Alfred Borden is the like quote unquote real name of the professor. Okay, the professor is the stage name he goes by. But the professor is this character, okay? There's these two twin brothers somewhere in London who grow up in the workhouse, and they decide they're going to get out and they're going to be performers. And so what they do is they take turns working, okay? Because they are identical. And one of them will dress up as Fallon, who is the engineer. He is the one who creates the tricks. He's the one who can stand backstage and nobody questions who he is because he's got this beard and glasses and the chubby cheeks and the hat, and he never talks. But both of them are really one of the brothers, okay? So this is where I said it's problematic calling them one or the other, because which one is Fallon and which one is Borden? One of them loved Sarah. One of them loved Olivia. One of them was arguably the father of the little girl, Sarah. And the other one was not. Or do I have the names wrong? Sarah, Olivia. I forget the little girl's name right now. But so for the practicality of making it easier, one of them loved Sarah. One of them loved Olivia. One of them died in the end, and the other one went on. You can prove which one it was. When they see each other in the end in the prison, dressed as Fallon, and he throws the ball to him and he says, "I'm sorry about Sarah. I never meant to hurt her. You go on and live your life." The one that loved Sarah and that is actually probably the father of the little girl is the one that lives. The one that loved Olivia is the one that dies. He's the one that you could kind of tell in the performance that one of them was a little bit surlier than the other one, and that one of them was a little bit more of a jerk. One of them was a little bit more angsty. One of them was more prone to violence and doing what had to be done, which is what Angier and Caldlow learns how to do too. So what am I leaving out here? So basically they explain the trick at the end of the movie. They dress up the same. One would go in the box, the other one would pop out, and that's how that would work. So let me take a look here at my own questions for you. Which one died at the end? How many times did Angier die? How can you tell them apart? The scene that's hiding in plain sight. Let's talk about that real quick. So 2 scenes from the beginning of the movie that I think are very helpful, and they're kind of connected, is they go and they see the Chinaman, which is not a politically correct thing, but it's turn of century, whatever. They go and see, I forget his name, with the goldfish trick. And then Borden is talking to Angier and he's saying, that is the trick. This old man who's like doddering and walking in his tiny little steps. He's like, that is the trick right there. Like, he's not this old frail man. He's probably a vibrant, strong guy who can do this trick. And he's playing the character of the like old man magician, but that's not who he is. And the reason that he's saying that is because he's like, I'm playing the part of Alfred Borden. I'm not really Alfred Borden. There is no Alfred Borden. He's a character I created, just like Fallon. And meanwhile, Angier's got this kind of bumpkin look on his face. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but he knows exactly what he's talking about. He just doesn't know that Borden is telling him the truth. Like, he is lying in plain sight. Like, I'm not who you think I am, because Robert Angier is also not a real person. He's Lord Caldlow. You can also tell by going through the movie what accent he's using. When he's using the corn-fed Nebraska American accent, he's Robert Angier. When he's using the British accent, he's Lord Caldlow. And different times in the movie, it does come and go. Like when he's talking to Cutter at the end, he's saying, I tried not to involve you. Like, he does speak in a British accent, and then he also speaks an American one. Again, go watch the movie again, because there's a lot of cool stuff that they hid in there for you. So after the part with the goldfish trick, Angier, Caldlow, whatever, Hugh Jackman, Wolverine is talking to his wife, and like he's saying, I don't know how he does it, and I could never, I could never live my life, like Borden said, pretending to be somebody else. And his wife says, well, you are pretending to be someone else. And he says, I don't think changing my name is quite the same thing. And meanwhile, like, this is the part where maybe he doesn't realize what he's done because he is just planning to do that. But then later he becomes this killer. Like, he becomes this really dark person that's driven by ambition. And he really gets his hands dirty. And this is where we get into the question of, like, which one's the better magician? Like, I mean, people loved seeing Robert Angier as a great Danton, and he was definitely a performer better than Borden, but Borden was probably the better magician because he's the one who people stole ideas from. So I don't know. Watch the movie again, see for yourself. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there for you to pick up. All right. So I hope that this has helped you figure some of it out. Again, if you watch this and then you watch the movie, I guess it makes it satisfying. But, knowing the answer to the trick should be like the last thing that you're interested in. I hope that you were entertained by the movie, because that is the point of it. All right. Take care.